Now that the 2021 NFL Draft is in the rearview mirror, it is not only time to start getting excited for the college football season, but also next year's NFL Draft. In this video, I will be going through my way too early top 5 quarterbacks for the 2022 NFL Draft. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. If y'all want, I can go through my way too early rankings for other positions as well. Also, let's have a conversation in the comment section below. Which quarterbacks are in your top 5 right now? Who will have the Joe Burrow, Zach Wilson-esque rise up the draft boards this season? Let me know. Before I get into my top 5 quarterbacks, let's go through some honorable mentions. My honorable mentions list is in no particular order, they are just some names I want to address. Tyler Shuck recently transferred from Oregon to Texas Tech. He is expected to put up big numbers in the Red Raiders' air raid offense. Brock Purdy looked to be a possible top 5 quarterback going into the 2020 season. Purdy has not been able to put things together for a full season so far in his career, but with Iowa State being one of the top teams in the Big 12 this preseason, Purdy has the opportunity to raise his draft stock. Malik Willis out of Liberty could be an interesting name to watch. The former Auburn Tiger threw for 2,250 yards and 20 touchdowns with 6 interceptions. He also rushed for 944 yards and 14 touchdowns on the ground for the Flames in 2020. Carson Strong is showing up on a lot of people's draft boards and could be another player to watch if he continues to improve. In 2020, Strong threw for 2,858 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Strong has missed most of the spring due to an injury, but will have the opportunity to show that he is the real deal against Cal, Kansas State, and Boise State this season. Phil Dracovic is one of my friend Scott Fisher's favorite players in college football. He played well throughout 2020 after transferring from Notre Dame to Boston College. He will be without his top target in Hunter Long, but will have a strong offensive line and wide receiver Zay Flower returning. De'Aaron King is an extremely athletic quarterback and finished the 2020 season strong before he tore his ACL in the bowl game against Oklahoma State. If he is able to come back healthy this fall, he should not only be a fun player to watch at Miami, but a name to watch in the 2022 NFL Draft. Matt Corral should put up big numbers this year in Lane Kiffin's offense. It will be the first time in his career will he be playing under the same offensive coordinator 2 years in a row. He should be fun to watch and could be a first round pick. Going into last season, Jaden Daniels was a name to watch for this year's draft class. He had a disappointing 2020 season and has kind of fallen under the radar. If he can rebound in 2021, he may be a name to watch. Dylan Gabriel has put up big numbers at UCF throughout his college career. In 23 games, he has averaged 314 yards per game. But we'll have a brand new head coach in Gus Malzahn this year. The last 2 guys I want to mention are Kent State's Dustin Crum, who received a late round grade for the 2021 NFL Draft before deciding to return for 1 more year, and Western Michigan's Caleb Ellaby. Ellaby has a rocket arm and could be a long-term investment by an NFL team. Now let's get into my top 5 quarterbacks for the 2022 NFL Draft class. Coming in at number 5 is USC quarterback Kedon Slovis. Currently, Slovis is all over the board depending on who you talk to. He is Todd McShay's top-rated quarterback in his 2022 mock draft, while others don't even have him in their top 5. Coming out of high school, Slovis was a 3-star recruit from Scottsdale, Arizona. At the time, he was projected to go on day 3 and compared to Kirk Cousins according to 24/7 Sports. Going into his freshman year, Slovis was unknown to many in the college football world, but when starter JT Daniels would go down with a torn ACL, Slovis would go on to have a breakout year. He threw for 3,502 yards and 30 touchdowns while completing 71.9% of his passes in 2019. In 2020, Slovis threw for 1,921 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, finishing the season with a 67% completion rate. He helped guide USC to a 5-1 record, losing to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. At one point, some were talking about Slovis being a frontrunner for the 2022 Heisman Trophy, but that has since cooled off. Slovis stands at 6'3" and weighs 215 pounds. In 2020, Slovis forced the issue from time to time, and USC was a few plays away from being 2-4 instead of 5-1. He will be without some of his top weapons, but will still have Drake London and Brew McCoy. If he is able to repeat the success of his freshman year, he could be a top 3 quarterback in this class. Desmond Ridder is the biggest underdog story when it comes to big names in this year's draft class. Ridder was a 3-star recruit out of high school and only received 1 Division I offer from Cincinnati. Ridder actually received the offer from a porta potty in the infield of the Kentucky Derby. Check out my video on him for more context. As a freshman, Ritter threw for 2,445 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions, while completing 62.4% of his passes and added 583 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Ritter's numbers as a sophomore took a step back as he threw for 2,164 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, completing 55.1% of his passes. He also added 650 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. Throughout the season, he battled through injuries and was unable to show off his talent. Ritter would have a breakout season in 2020, throwing for 2,296 yards, 19 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, while completing 66.2% of his passes in 10 games. Ritter also rushed for 592 yards and 12 touchdowns on the ground. He helped guide Cincinnati to a 9-1 record and an American Athletic Conference championship. Ritter measures to be 6'4" and weighs 215 pounds. There are no questions around his mobility, but Ritter does need to develop his arm a little more. Some may knock Ritter for playing in the American Conference, but he will be able to showcase his talents, probably on primetime, against Notre Dame and Indiana this season. Don't be surprised if Ritter goes in the first round next year. To be honest, when I first compiled this list, I had JT Daniels ranked 4th and 5th from time to time, but when it came time to actually make this video, JT Daniels ended up as my QB3 for the 2022 NFL Draft Class as of now. Coming out of high school, JT Daniels was a 5-star recruit who was the second best pro-style quarterback in his class behind Trevor Lawrence. Daniels actually reclassified to attend USC earlier than he was supposed to. During his freshman year, a year he was supposed to be a senior in high school might I add, Daniels threw for 2,672 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 10 interceptions, while completing 59.5% of his passes. Going into 2019, Daniels looked to have a big season before a torn ACL would derail his season and open the door for Keaton Slovis to take over the starting quarterback job. After the 2019 season, Daniels decided to transfer to Georgia for a fresh start. Daniels would not play a lot during the 2020 season due to not having his full mobility back during the early part of the season. Towards the tail end of the season, the Bulldogs' offense was sputtering, so head coach Kirby Smart turned to JT Daniels, who would light it up. In 4 games, Daniels threw for 1,231 yards, 10 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, and won every start he made. He will probably be without his top weapon in George Pickens, who tore his ACL this spring. Daniels has proven he can make any throw you need him to make, but has not shown any mobility. Aside from sacks last season, Daniels did not register a rush attempt. JT Daniels will be tested early and often this season, opening the season against Clemson and playing an SEC schedule. If he is able to repeat his success he had in the short sample size in 2020, don't be surprised if he's the first quarterback taken off the board. Before I mention who my number 2 player is, the battle between 1 and number 2 is extremely close, that I more view it as a 1A and 1B. Coming in at number 2 is Oklahoma quarterback Spencer Rattler. Rattler was a 5-star recruit who was the best quarterback in the 2019 recruiting class. Back in 2018, 24/7 Sports compared his skills to Chad Kelly and projected him to be a future first-round pick. During his true freshman year, Rattler sat behind Jalen Hurts, who would go on to become a second-round pick. When it was finally his time to shine, Rattler struggled early, throwing 4 interceptions and taking 6 sacks in losses to Kansas State and Iowa State, and was even benched for a period against Texas. So you may be wondering, how is he my number 2 quarterback and almost number 1 quarterback for this class? Well, it's not how you start, it is how you finish. Rattler only threw 2 interceptions in Oklahoma's last 7 games and had multiple touchdowns in every game when combined with his rushing and passing numbers. He finished his redshirt freshman season throwing for 3,031 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, while also having 6 rushing touchdowns on the ground. He completed 67.5% of his passes and could build on that going into 2021. Rattler brings back his top 2 weapons from last year in Theo Weiss and Marvin Mims and adds Mike Woods and Mario Williams Jr. to the mix. Rattler should have a big season this year and could be a franchise quarterback for an NFL team in the future. With Rattler as a Heisman favorite and Oklahoma as a national title contender, don't be surprised if he is the first player taken off the board in the 2022 NFL Draft. The only reason he is not number 1 right now on my board is I just want to see a little more from him this coming season. Coming in as my number 1 quarterback in my way too early, remember way too early, quarterback rankings is Sam Howell out of North Carolina. Coming out of high school, Sam Howell was a 4-star recruit and was originally committed to Florida State. Then, Mac Brown returned to Chapel Hill and flipped the in-state quarterback recruit to the Tar Heels. Check out my video I did on Howell, it's a crazy story. I'll put it in the description below. 24/7 Sports compared Howell to Baker Mayfield and rated him as a future day 2 pick out of high school. During his freshman year, Howell threw for 3,641 yards, 38 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, and almost upset Clemson. As a sophomore, Howell threw for 3,586 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, while completing 68.1% of his passes and rushing for 5 more touchdowns on the ground. Sam Howell was great with the deep ball, completing 46% of them for an average of 45.4 yards. Howell will be without some of his top playmakers from 2020, but will have some guys with potential playing with him. He returns his whole offensive line, which could lead to some great things. There are some concerns with Howell, including his hand size. He also needs to learn to take what the defense gives him. Howell will have the opportunity to lead North Carolina to success without needing to play Clemson during the regular season, and should be a name to watch for the 2022 NFL Draft. He also has the potential to drop in the rankings as well. All I know is, I can't wait for the college football season to start in a few months, and let's get the hype train going for the 2022 draft class. Don't forget to let me know who your top 5 quarterbacks are in this year's draft class. Also, let me know if you want me to make this a series, and as always, remember to embrace the grind.